Greetings again, gentlemen.
Hi then.
The numbers dwindle after so much prayer, intense concentration on the readings and so on and so forth. But God bless them and God bless us. This is sort of for the record. We started or returned rather to what last year or the year before was called St. Gregory's Evenings. But this time round we are doing our sessions after the morning prayer, the Typica, and given that last time we didn't record, I thought it would be good to give a brief summary of what we did then, and then to move to the object of our meetings. So this series of, well, let's call them liberal conversations, things in heaven and on earth, has two parts, or each session has two parts. One won't go recorded, where we talk about our own things, personal matters, interests, and topics of interest to one or the other. And then we will be reading through the Philokalia. So what we did last time, that was my suggestion. We looked at the prologue of Saint Maximus the Confessor's chapters on love, or texts on love or compassion, whatever we want to call this writing. More Western kind of renditions of the text refer to charity. It's not about charity, at least not in the sense that we use this word charity today. What we did was we read from the second volume of the Philokalia. Saint Maximus has a number of writings collected there in the second volume, but I stopped at the foreword or the prologue of the author, Saint Maximus, written for this presbyter, or rather abbot, Elpidius, who asked Maximus to write to him about the spiritual life, and Maximus makes reference to the first treatise sent to Elpidius on the ascetic life. And then, given that Elpidius discussed that treatise, a dialogue rather, with his monks, and there were questions about the nature of the gospel and the very essence and goal of the gospel, they asked Saint Maximus to write another treatise on love, and this is what he did, writing 400 texts. Technically they are called chapters, but they are very brief formulations. And what we did last time, we looked at the prologue, which sets somehow the context for us for our meetings. What I also mentioned last time is the fact that this prologue is very important for me. It's part and parcel of my, let's call it, method, teaching method, both with my students in theological colleges, and in terms of our discussions in our prayer setting. Perhaps those who are watching this video know that years ago I stopped preaching. Well, sometimes I talk too much, but that's another story. That's not my intention. But I don't do what you call a traditional sermon. What we try to do is to apply to the readings of a given Sunday what actually Saint Maximus says here in this prologue, We approach with humility the texts, as Saint Maximus invites his readers to approach his chapters on love, and with sympathy and understanding, and one of the things for which I love this passage is precisely this line here, especially the phrase rendered as careful attention, which I explained in the original Greek of the text. The word is Synexetasis, which means not only careful attention or attentive examination of a topic, it also means or indicates togetherness, to do that as a group. So you can call it careful attention or attentive examination of a topic, but within a group, and that's the SYN, syn, in the word Synexetasis. Why is this so significant? It's because it reminds us of a spiritual discipline, spiritual monastic discipline, where, as we know already in the sayings of the desert, the Egyptian desert, 4th century, 5th century, there was this contemplative exercise. Monks, nuns would learn by heart a passage from the scriptures, say in the morning, or a saying from the elders, or something like these small chapters, Philokalia in Greek, which were mainly succinct, brief in their format, in order to be easily memorized. And Maximus actually talks about memorization as a spiritual exercise in this very prologue. So second volume of the Philokalia, Maximus's foreword or prologue to the chapters on love, and these spiritual exercises of memorization, careful consideration, were actually practiced by the ascetics of the Egyptian deserts and others in the ancient world. And then after memorization and contemplation through the day, they would gather together at the end of the day, possibly after the service of Compline or the prayer of Compline. So it's after dinner. There's another order of prayer, and it is after that prayer that they would sit together, the elder and the disciples, and would continue as a group reflection, the contemplation of those passages. This is pretty much what we do. Perhaps you recognize the pattern. This is what we do in our settings. When we have the Typica, we read the scriptures for the Sunday, and then we have this conversation. And I found this method as very profitable personally and communally. It helps us think together, fix stuff together, because sometimes there are misunderstandings, or even bring up nuances that escaped to one or other in the group, and it's a very enriching experience for all involved. By the way, if anyone wants to get a better sense of this kind of conversation or spiritual exercise as a group, in the early 5th century there was this Latin-speaking author, originating, rumors say, from nowadays Romania, Saint John Cassian. Some of his works are included in the Philokalia. John Cassian was a disciple of Saint John the Golden Mouth, John Chrysostom, but also a visitor of Egypt, and who spent some time in Egypt learning from the elders there. and he wrote in Latin when he finally reached the west, southern France, where he established a couple of monasteries. He wrote a work called in Latin Conlationes, usually translated as conferences. They aren't conferences in the modern sense. They are confere. In Latin means, again, talking together. Yeah, conferences are not, when someone gives a speech, when they come together to speak together, to address together a certain topic. And this is what Synexetasis means actually in Greek. So John Cassian is an earlier witness of this tradition. Maximus is 7th century, Cassian early 5th century, and we have already descriptions of how these conferences went, how the conversation would unfold between the elder and those around the elder. Anyway, this is the introduction or a summary of what we discussed. Any comments or questions at this stage, or shall we move to the next text?
I used Cassian's conferences quite a bit last year, and it's a good read. You actually get into an understanding about, so-and-so said such and such, but I still have a question. Can I unpack that a bit more? And then the conversation rolls forward again. It's a good read.
Yeah. And as a matter of fact, thank you, Alan, for sharing this. I mean, this is what I found very interesting about this kind of exercise. It shows that being a believer, grounded in the faith, doesn't mean questions don't arise. Questions shouldn't be asked, and matters shouldn't be addressed, which is such a different approach to things from what we know it happens in many Christian, let's call them circles, in our day and age, when people are just happy with the bullet point kind of faith. They don't ask questions. They take everything as though thinking is illicit. Yeah, and I find this not as irritating. I find it as a dangerous situation when we stop asking questions, when we stop seeking truth and wisdom within the confines of our faith. We are in danger of losing everything that we think we possess. That smattering of certainty that we may have acquired through basic catechism.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay, thank you. Any other thoughts, Martin?
No, not of relevance.
Okay, so, and what we set to do together is return to the first volume of the Philokalia and begin from the beginning of the English version of the Philokalia as translated by Sherrard, Callistos Ware, and someone else I forgot. This is just a matter of beginning with the beginning as we find the collection, but also a matter of acquiring certain concepts that, for example, Maximus's chapters on love doesn't use, doesn't deploy, and we need those concepts of ascetic struggle, spiritual warfare, vigilance, and so on and so forth, which are very well captured by the first work collected there, attributed to Saint Isaiah the Solitary. Okay, let me share my screen, and so we are reading from the first volume of the Philokalia. There's this author known as Isaiah, Saint Isaiah the Solitary, and the first work collected in the English version of the Philokalia is on guarding the intellect, 27 texts, or Kephalia.
Can you help me with the page number here to quickly come to where you are?
Okay, so volume 1, page 22.
Thank you.
Volume 1, page 22, yeah. By the way, perhaps again for the record, because we discussed these things some other time, but for those who haven't been part of the group, they don't have this. The Philokalia is a post-Byzantine collection of spiritual writings. The writings are from the 4th century down to the 15th century. They were collected in the 18th century by two groups of monks in Mount Athos, a Greek group led by Saint Macarius of Corinth and Saint Nicodemus of the Holy Mountain. The other group, Slavo-Romanian. They were Slavic from Ukraine and Romanians, led by Saint Paisi Velichkovsky. So there are various versions of the Philokalia. This is a translation, what we are using, a translation basically of the Greek Philokalia. In the original Greek Philokalia, the first text collected is not this one by Saint Isaiah. It is one attributed to Saint Anthony the Great, but as the editors of or translators of the English version tell us in the introduction, they moved at the end of the first volume that writing attributed to Saint Anthony because they suspect of not being a Christian text. They suspect a misattribution that made possible the inclusion of the text in the Philokalia, but not necessarily something that has to do with the teaching of Saint Anthony. I think the reasons of the translators can be understood up to a point. The point I try to make is the fact that after they produced this translation, as a matter of fact, scholars have discovered 7 letters of St. Anthony written in Coptic. They are now available in English. They are well researched, and there are many topics in those letters that return in the writing that inaugurates or opens the Greek Philokalia, which I repeat in this English translation is moved at the end or the back of the volume. So perhaps for the integrity of the collection, it would have been more prudent for the translators to leave that text attributed to St. Anthony where it belongs, not to move it somewhere because of their lack of information at the time of doing this translation. But it doesn't matter. Yeah, just the little old me saying a few things from the store of wisdom accumulated. That's my line of work. Yeah. Okay. So on guarding the intellect, there's a few things to say about this title. Guarding, it's vigilance, nipsis in Greek, or nepsis, and this is a reference to a certain spiritual discipline which we find in many traditions, including in Stoic spirituality, so Greek Stoic spirituality. By the way, the language of the Philokalia is replete of Stoic tropes. Yeah? Apparently, the early Christians, including fathers of the desert, found Stoic spirituality as a good vehicle for communicating what they believed about the spiritual journey, the spiritual life, and adopted many keywords from the Stoic tradition, sometimes leaving them as they found them, some other times reinterpreting those words. But in this case, nepsis, vigilance, awakening, awareness, it means a number of things, is a very, well, traditional Stoic text. Concept, but it's also something that we find in many other traditions. Yeah, awakening, awareness, being present in the present, which is one of the things that makes this reading, the Philokalia and texts of this kind, very relevant today when we live in the age of dispersion. You know, where the avalanche of information shatters our attention, and as very recent serious studies show, at least the younger generations that don't know better, they don't have an alternative to their way of life with digital objects and digital life and gizmos and so on and so forth. Their attention span is shattered to pieces. They cannot withstand silence, for example, for more than a few seconds. Yeah, guarding the intellect is vigilance when it comes to the mind. Intellect is a very unfortunate translation of the word in Greek nous, which can be translated as mind, as, let's say, the conscious level of one's mind. And it's not so beneficial to translate it as intellect, where it's only the rationality or pure rationality. The mind, the nous of the Greeks, is richer, and it entails existential dimensions, not only mere rationality. It doesn't matter. So this is a booklet, a collection of 27 texts or Kephalia, little chapters, that teach us about how to keep our mind alert and focused. Yeah? Alert and focused. And because we don't have much time, I think we should just give a go at the first of these chapters, these texts or Kephalia, to see what St. Isaiah shares with the reader. There is among the passions an anger of the intellect, and this anger is in accordance with nature. Without anger, a person, so I sort of try to bring more inclusive language there, not a man. A person cannot attain purity. Without anger, a person cannot attain purity. A person has to feel angry with all that is sown in him or her by the enemy. When Job felt this anger, he reviled his enemies, calling them dishonorable men of no repute, lacking everything good, whom I would not consider fit to live with the dogs that guard my flocks. And it shows where in Job this line is found, and also the fact that this is a translation based on the Greek version of the Old Testament. LXX means 70. It's number 70 in Latin, the Septuagint version. They who wish to acquire the anger that is in accordance with nature must uproot all self-will until they establish within themselves the state natural to the intellect, to the mind. Well, there you have it. Just earlier today, during our conversation after the readings of the Sunday, we talked about anger as an enemy, as an internal power, a certain aptitude that requires taming, requires to be steered instead of being left to run wildly and to overcome us, or to overpower our mind, our capacity for, let's say, informed deliberation, for example, and decision. In this case, we have a very different story. Yeah, what kind of anger is he talking about? Not one of the base passions. He says an anger which is in accordance with nature. By the way, any philosophical ring bells when it comes to the phrase in accordance with nature? Stoicism, it's Stoic spirituality, 100%. Yeah. So one of the main concepts of Stoic spirituality, or ethics, if you like, was living in accordance with nature. Kata physin, in accordance with nature. According to Stoic anthropology, human nature is good. And we have within us what the Greeks called the logos, something of a rational principle that is like a spiritual DNA, a spiritual infrastructure of our human nature. So if we know ourselves, remember how important this was in Socrates' discourse. Know yourself. If we know ourselves, if we know our nature, we access this inner logos, this inner, let's call it, rational and regulating pattern of mind and life, and then we will be able to live correctly a virtuous life. Virtue for the Stoics is to live in accordance with nature. Yeah. So that was their perception of things, and there you have it. A monk from whenever he lived, end of the 4th century or in the 5th century, Saint Isaiah, the hermit or the solitary, we have this Stoic concept featuring as a central idea of his discourse. It appears twice in this brief statement. Yeah. Living in accordance with nature. So, there is an anger, he says, a form of anger that is natural to us, that is, let's call it a positive kind of energy, which of course contradicts everything that we usually think in terms of angry people, angry birds, and so on and so forth. Yeah.
Righteous anger. It's often referred to, it's often used, like when Christ goes into the temple and throws out the money changers. That's often referred to as righteous anger. You know, it's because he was so absolutely disgusted with how they were abusing the temple of God, the house of prayer. So in that sense, that's how I believe they use that term righteous anger, because it contradicts everything that is natural to our nature. Yeah.
Well, in that case, yes, it's applicable. Thank you for sharing, Alan. But I doubt that this is what Isaiah says. I still work with the assumption that this is a text conditioned by his Stoic culture.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, the example he gives from Scripture, from Job, of course, sound very similar to what you described, Alan. That righteous anger, as the Lord was angry at those who dishonored or profanated the temple by transforming it into a marketplace, which reminds me of many Christian churches that have things to sell at the entry. They sell stuff. No one gets angry with that stuff. but the Lord did. Job was disgusted by his friends, and others because of their way of life. So in a way, there's a connection between that righteous anger of Jesus and what Isaiah says. But apart from this scriptural paradigm, this scriptural example, what Isaiah, at least it seems to me, says is that there's a kind of anger that belongs to the mind, to the intellect. It's not subconscious. Remember, nous, mind, might be a broader concept than what we consider today rational mind or intellect, but it's still on the level of, let's call it awareness, rationality. An anger of the mind. This boggles me. And I in this light, I think what he talks about here is a different kind of or meaning of anger as a reaction that has to do with my own nature. Like, for example, in Stoic anthropology, which can be found in many places in the Philokalia behind this Christian discourse. In Stoic anthropology, the inner self of the person is anchored in the logos, which is a rational regulating principle of mind and life, I repeat. Through introspection, I'm supposed to reach this level of, let's say, rationality that comes from beyond me. It's divine in origin. And when I do so, I realize what my nature is about. And I am supposed to live in accordance with what I discovered about my nature. And what I discovered about my nature is that my nature tends to adhere to the truth, to wisdom, to beauty, whatever other values the Greeks cultivated and many early Christian thinkers adopted as valued values. In this case, an anger of the mind is one that, yes, is akin to the righteous anger you mentioned, but it's also something of a, I don't know, an expression, a manifestation of this inner norm of our nous, of our mind, and what's interesting about this, it's that it's the fact that it presents itself in a form that is dispassionate. Look at this. He who wishes, or they who wish to acquire the anger that is in accordance with nature must uproot all self-will. Yeah?
Can I make a contribution here, because it keeps nagging me? It seems to be a concentration of forces, of energies within the human being. And the example that comes to me to illustrate that is a person is approached with a superhuman task. For example, in an accident, to lift a car to release a trapped person. The anger with the situation facing the victim of that enables the rescuer to facilitate within themselves tasks that normally they would not be able to achieve physically.
Yeah, and that's a very good analogy, Martin. Thank you. As we will progress, God willing, through these chapters of St. Isaiah, we will see that Isaiah envisages the workings of this righteous anger or natural anger as a form of combating both the irrational drives within oneself and external attacks. So in a way, your physicalist analogy works very well. There's a kind of anger that I need to cultivate, which pertains to my nature, pertains to my mind, and which can be deployed instead of pushing everyone away from me because I'm frustrated, angry, and so on and so forth with everyone around me. No, it works against the true enemies of me, of my peace, of my stability, both internal irrational drives, untamed horses, to use the expression of St. John Chrysostom, and invisible enemies, spiritual attack. Yeah, it's never a matter of pushing people away or expressing ourselves violently against people. We'll see how he describes this exercise of the anger of the intellect, or the anger of the mind, which is in accordance with nature, or in accordance with the logos of things, the divine reason behind all things. Yeah. So no, but it's good. I mean, it's good, but it's not what he talks about here is not this kind of exercise of adrenaline fueled whatever might, energy, pushing mountains and buses and stuff like that. It's about different obstacles, mountains, yes, buses colliding, trains derailing, and so on and so forth, but those are within, not outside. And he says, well, we shouldn't actually castrate this anger, which is a natural energy. We should purify it. And I repeat, for me, what's the key to understanding this kind of anger is the last sentence of the chapter. Yeah. Whoever wishes to get there, they should uproot all self-will, to fight the old self, as St. Paul would have it. Yeah? To fight the old self and to re-establish oneself in the natural state of the intellect, which is one of allowing itself to be permeated by the Logos of God. So this is the beginning. This is, let's call it, the preamble of this collection of texts. Of course, St. Isaiah actually left many more writings, and they are, fortunately for us, translated into English by Father John Christagis. Father John grew up in Sydney. He's an archdeacon of the Ecumenical Throne, but he lives in the United States these days. And he produced a translation of the whole collection of texts, or Kephalia, chapters, attributed to St. Isaiah. So this is just a selection done by the Greek Athenites of the 18th century. I assume there's a certain purpose to this collection or selection of passages. Anyway, it looks like a very fortunate way of inaugurating the Philokalia in this English translation, because it sort of points our attention to one of the main problems that we have as human beings in this day and age: lack of attention, the loss of attentiveness. And where that can lead if it's not controlled. In our battle for regaining attentiveness, St. Isaiah says we need to discover or rediscover within us this energy, this violent energy of anger, themos, but to use it according to nature in a selfless way. Look at this. We think that by nature we are selfish monsters, yeah? That's how certain people like Dawkins describe us, the selfish gene. Yeah, we are genetically selfish. Whereas the Stoics and Saint Isaiah have a different kind of anthropology. They believe that, given its establishment in the Logos, human nature is good, and we need to retrieve that goodness within.
That seems to be a complete reversal, in a way, of much of so-called Christian thinking about the nature of the soul, that we are born evil,
Yeah,
and bad and rotten and all the rest of it.
yeah.
I mean, the scriptures say the heart is evil. I think that might be a reference to something different to the intellect that's being referred to here, the nous. How do those two line up? Is the heart evil because of our brokenness, and therefore we have a corrupted passion, as it were, as a result? And we're called to our, another word, our higher nature, the logos within us, as you're suggesting? I'm just trying to put those two together in a dialogue.
This is it requires a lot of discussion. As a matter of fact, scholars have long established the fact that even in the anthropology of the New Testament, we have, even in the discourse of Christ, not only in St. Paul, we have references that seem to be coherent, consistent to the mind and the heart. So the words nous and cardia, mind and heart, are present in the discourse of the Lord, at least in the Greek New Testament, St. Paul. Even St. John Chrysostom long ago discussed this as two alternative ways of addressing the same reality within us.
Okay, yep.
So it could be like two facets of one coin, or how to call it, two sides of the coin. Yeah.
Yep.
It's the inner me, my, let's call it, broadly speaking, consciousness, which has various layers, various sides to it. What basic modern psychology would call the conscious and the subconscious. Most times in the New Testament and other late ancient texts, at least in Greek, in the Greek Christian tradition, refer to the mind in this more elevated sense, the nous, as already on the path of openness to God. Whereas cardia, the heart, which is part of the same inner me, is usually understood as the subconscious, where many uncontrolled things happen.
Okay.
This is rendered by the author known as Saint Maximus at the end of the 4th century, or towards the end of the 4th century, in terms of darkness and light. Light would be associated with a nous that is on the path of openness to God, to the Logos. Darkness would be associated with the heart, and Macarius actually describes a battle that takes within us, within our heart. The heart becomes a battlefield between light and darkness, especially after we made our first steps towards becoming children of light. There's a conflict within us, which St. Paul describes in Romans 7. Again, we discussed this earlier. The law of the mind and the law of the body. It's the same idea, different terms, and the battle takes place within. In a sense, at least that's how I read the Philokalia, what the whole message is about is an enlightenment of the heart, of that realm of confusion within, but it's conditioned by the enlightenment of the mind. So only insofar as the mind converts itself to the law of the Logos, the norm of the Logos, divine reason, the mind can clean up the house or the backyard or whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, that's very helpful. In my experience, I mean, the concept of the nous was never part of my understanding as a Christian beforehand. It was always to do with how evil my heart is, and I must, try really hard to be good, without understanding your phrase, the Logos within us. I think that's a beautiful phrase, and it reminds me of the dignity of our humanity made in the image of God.
Yeah. Well, yeah. Thank you, Alan. As a matter of fact, well, let's call it the elephant in the room, is the fact that what you are referring to as, let's say, Christian lore, is basically derived from the pessimistic anthropology of St. Augustine in the 5th century, which was revived by the reformers and has become part and parcel of the Western cast of mind in Christian milieus, where our nature is so corrupted, or Augustine called it, we are massa damnata, a condemned bunch of animals. Nothing good about us. And that conditioned the Western sense of what we Christians are supposed to undertake to discipline the beast, transforming it. And there's no light within. Whereas what we see in St. Isaiah and the rest of the Philokalia, and indeed in the rest of the Eastern Orthodox tradition and its Byzantine and early Christian roots, what we see is a more complex, let's call it grayish kind of anthropology of light and darkness. There's something good, positive, indelibly so within us. The fact that we are marked or configured in the image of Christ cannot be erased. It can be hidden, however. And remember the Lord's own parables about having to dig up for the treasure hidden, hidden in the land, in the ground. Those parables are taken by early Christian interpreters as our need to uncover, let's call it the Logos within, or Christ within us, which was obscured by an irrational way of life, unguided. Well, as a matter of fact, even in the Orthodox service of baptism, if you read the initial prayers, the so-called exorcisms, they are not only exorcisms, but the whole group is called exorcisms. So the initial part, before the actual baptism, describes, analyzes, I would rather say, analyzes this complex nature of ours as basically good but tainted, and therefore the impression that one gets by reading those prayers, or prayerful analysis, if you like, is that we are indeed born to this world as children of darkness, but not
in sin. My mother conceived me, says the psalm and the prayers.
That captures it well. So we are scarred by all the countless generations before us, whose genes flow through our veins. But on the other hand, there's something within us, a region, let's call it, within us, that is not tainted, affected by whatever bad genes we have inherited, or environment of sinfulness, or corrupted values we have been exposed to, or our own bad choices in life. So there's something there that never goes away, and as good diggers, gold seekers, We are supposed to dig the ground of our own lives and hearts, and to enlighten those inner caves, or whatever you want to call them, to see, to discover the light hidden there. So this is it. This is what the Philokalia is about, but it all begins as a battle of the mind. Remember the title of this first collection of passages in the English version: Vigilance of the intellect, awareness, awakening and awareness, focus of the nous, of the mind. In other words, there's a lot of stuff to do, and it all begins with reconstructing, reinforcing the sovereignty of our mind, of our nous, which can be affected, like Plato's horses. It can be, our inner passions can drive the mind away from its nature.
This is where I think the Jesus prayer comes for me when I'm dealing with this sort of stuff, and it's persistent, ongoing, never releasing me from its claws, is to constantly come back to Lord Jesus Christ, Son of the living God, have mercy on me, a sinner. And that has got me through many a night and many a day at the vigilance that's needed. But it's such a simple cure, these simple words. And it works if I keep at it, and then I become weak and lazy, and then the claws bite again.
Yeah. Well, the Philokalia is actually like an ongoing handbook meant to remind us of how simple this actually is. The language is sometimes loaded, sometimes very difficult and requires decoding. But this is what the Philokalia does. Each of these texts collected in it is like a map of the inner life, and a reminder of what we are supposed to do, and how simple it is actually to do in terms of pursuing our inner struggle, our battle, but sometimes we need explanation. This isn't for Christians who adhere to bullet points in terms of spirituality or doctrine or ethics or whatever. This is for people who want to understand. And the
meat eaters,
whatever you want to call them. Philokalia is actually
using Paul's analogy,
for the strong. I hear you. It's a handbook that explains why we do what we do, and how we are supposed to do it. Okay.
And thanks for sharing this. I mean, this is wonderful for me to have in my living room this teaching from this background of experience that the contributors have been giving. Thank you.
And thank you. And God bless us.
Amen.
Well, all the best, everyone.
Thanks, Jerry.
Given it's Sunday of forgiveness, please forgive me for whatever silly things I said, sadness I caused, and so on and so forth.
Likewise, Father.
Amen.
God bless us all.